Hello there, everyone. I'm Galen Morse, and welcome to Journey to Recovery. We appreciate having you along today. This podcast is entitled Becoming Intentional, Part 1. On today's program, we'll talk with Dr. Hal Baumschen about setting goals and following through without being so distracted or interrupted. We'll look at key areas where you can become intentional and deliberate in your recovery program. Thanks for joining us today. Our podcast focuses on the co-occurring disorders of mental health and substance abuse. We present a wide range of thought-provoking, hopeful, and positive topics from a clinical yet practical perspective. And we provide a solid, truly integrated co-occurring disorder resource you can use in your treatment program or in your own recovery. Our host is Dr. Hal Baumschen, a licensed clinical psychologist and licensed alcohol and drug counselor. He's the executive director of Northland Counseling Services and the clinical director of North Star Regional Co-occurring Disorder Treatment Programs. He's an author, speaker, and clinician with over 30 years of counseling experience. I'm here today with Tim Bodie, operations director at Northland Counseling Services, and with Dr. Hal Baumschen, our host at Journey to Recovery. How are you guys today?
Doing well, Galen. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Thanks. Hello, everyone. On this podcast, Tim, you know this, we talk about co-occurring disorders. If someone has a co-occurring disorder, they're struggling with substance abuse issues and mental health issues at the same time. And what we do in our treatment program is we try to address all of that at the same time in the same place with the same treatment staff. And when somebody comes into treatment, I think they've really given up their life of addiction and they're trying to now fully engage in a life of recovery. So we're going to talk through some ways that will keep people focused in their recovery.
I think it's true that many people spend their entire lives living thoughtlessly and aimlessly. Don't you think that's true?
I do. When they live haphazardly, you don't plan, you don't follow through very well. When someone becomes drug and alcohol addicted, they spend more time and attention diligently pursuing their addiction and anything that supports their addiction rather than on other things.
Right, so other dreams and aspirations just fall by the wayside.
And spending time planning and focusing on pursuing life goals may actually have evaporated. Perhaps they were interested in that at one point in time, but then that goes away.
Yeah, so as you enter into and build your recovery, it can be a pleasant privilege to once again focus on the important aspects of your new life.
It sounds great, doesn't it? Like, I'm going to think through, I'm going to be proud of my life, I'm going to take care of some things, I'm going to work diligently and pursue my goals and dreams once again.
Yeah, so one important aspect of that is to limit distractions and interruptions. So if you want to become more intentional in your recovery, I think it's helpful to focus on how you'll achieve your goals.
Galen, you ever get distracted? Lose your focus?
What?
Exactly.
That's the point.
Happens to us all the time, doesn't it? If we look at this matrix, and Tim, you and I have talked about this matrix we're going to talk about today. I think you even had it on your whiteboard for some time.
Right.
If we look at this matrix of important and urgent, goals are best understood as having a high level of importance, but kind of a moderate or even a low level of urgency. We're not in crisis here, but we're pursuing something. When you pursue your goal, you're pursuing something that's important to you. Goals are those activities that help us achieve important personal and professional tasks. Make sure you have enough time to attend to your goals without unnecessary urgency or crisis interrupting you.
Right.
So again, stay focused on what you're dreaming about, what you want to accomplish in your life. But all too often we have something like that, and then it falls by the wayside and gets interrupted by other things.
Yeah, so if a task is urgent but not important, you could be easily interrupted, and other people are often the source of these interruptions.
Like someone walking by your chair while you're reading and asking you a question, that might seem to be an interruption.
When I look at Tim's office situation, he gets interrupted, and I'm one of the chief guys that interrupts him. Hey, Tim, can I ask you for something? How about you, Galen? You You get interrupted.
I definitely get more done if I'm tied to my chair in my studio, focused on what I need to do.
If the task is not urgent and not important, then we could consider it a distraction.
So an interruption has more urgency than a distraction. Is that right?
Yeah, mom. What? That's an interruption. A distraction might be something that you allow to creep into your life, but it's not really screaming at you. But you check your phone again and you start playing a game on your phone or a video game. That's more of a distraction.
For example, you are working on your computer and you need to do something online, so you switch over to your browser, and then you think like, oh,
I'll just check my email or something.
Yeah.
We fall prey to interruption and distractions all day. What would you guess are some common distractions?
Playing video games,
Yep.
texting on your phone.
Watching television,
I don't know if
something
I
like
can
that.
say the name of the company, but the thing we all search many times a day.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
Some kind of a web browser that we're looking at.
Yep.
You bet. See what's going on in the news. Check the news out.
Yeah, so these are all things that are not urgent or very important, but they manage to engage our attention, and they keep us from working toward any significant goal.
Extremely urgent, but not necessarily very important. That may feel like a crisis.
That's right. These are unexpected but often critical, such as taking a family member to urgent care for immediate medical attention. If the little girl has a 104.5 temperature, that not only is important, but it now has become urgent.
Right. So, and a crisis cannot be avoided. It's always nice to have enough time in your schedule to manage these.
You remember, I think we've talked about having a little margin in your life.
Yes, right.
Wouldn't it be nice, like, if a crisis like that, an urgency like that came up, it doesn't just wig you out in terms of your own personal energy and resources, but you've got enough time and personal energy to manage something like that. Yes, it's urgent, but it's still not going to wig you out or cause problems for you emotionally.
Right. So to summarize then, a goal is something that's important, but not a crisis at the moment. So it's not urgent. And
Go ahead.
and then an interruption would be something that has low urgency, right?
Right.
But a little bit higher sense of importance. So you're kind of forced to drop what you're doing and attend to that interruption. Like when you walk into my office,
Right.
I kind of have to stop what I'm doing and pay attention to you.
Or like a phone call, is that an interruption?
Absolutely. And we all, hopefully, we shut our phones off today so we wouldn't get that interruption. Right. How many telemarketers does it take, Galen, to change a light bulb? Well, only one, but she has to do it right at dinner time.
Right.
Absolute truth.
A distraction is low urgency and low importance, like playing a video game or texting on your phone or watching another season of Netflix.
You know, I'm usually not distracted when I'm playing a video game. I'm pretty focused.
So we've mentioned important goals, distraction, and interruption.
And then the next thing we want to discuss a little more is crisis.
Right. Again, a crisis has those high levels of urgency and a high level of importance. Like I mentioned earlier, when somebody has a fever and you have to take them to ER, that's both important and urgent.
So going back to what we're talking about in recovery, developing a solid recovery program, where do we want to spend our efforts in that?
Right. So we're talking about urgency, crisis, interruption, distraction, but how does that relate to treatment?
Right.
We want to spend time and energy on our important goals of recovery. We want to limit interruptions. We want to limit distractions and even limit living in a crisis mode when we can. We want to be intentional about how we spend our time, how we spend our energy, our money, and how we spend our efforts.
So that, I think, brings us to the idea of creating an intentional vision for your life. And we're going to talk about some areas now that will help us live more thoughtfully and intentionally.
How about family? Living with family members can be difficult and challenging. So it would be nice if we could really have some goals set aside how we're going to work with our family members.
Yeah, so we want to be intentional, right, about how we interact with family members.
Consider various ways that you could make a difference in the lives of your family members. what could you do to improve the relationship? Again, you're giving this some forethought and some planning.
Right. So as we consider being intentional with family members, we might ask ourselves questions like this. Do you have family relationships that you need to spend more time with or that you need to rebuild trust in?
Right. That's important. What could I do that's going to help this relationship? Can I think it through and plan for it? Are there certain relationships with family members that could be improved or even restored? And then one way to think through this is to try to name a couple of things that you could do to improve the quality of your family life.
Yep. Another area that we can spend time thinking about intentionally is our spending habits.
Right, I couldn't possibly be out of money because I still have checks. Sometimes that's not really planning ahead.
What do you mean?
That doesn't work. Spending habits vary from person to person and can be different for each of us from time to time. Many people have difficulty delaying gratification and end up buying things that we don't really need or spending more for something because we want it right now, maybe didn't look at other possibilities or do some shopping around.
Yeah, well, we certainly live in a culture that tries to convince us to buy something now and pay for it later, right? This can add to painful financial trouble down the road.
Have you ever done that? Bought something now and I want it right now, and boy, they're spending a lot of money trying to convince us you need it now.
Yes.
Pay for it later.
Yep.
Don't worry about paying for it. You can delay payments for a year. I just saw some carpeting ads like that.
Yeah.
What common impulse buys can you delay or go without? You could ask yourself those questions. And it's a way to think through spending a little bit more carefully. Plan ahead for what you're going to need. Try to find out, is it a need or just a desire of mine?
Yep. And similar to this area is long-term financial planning.
Right. If your long-term financial planning is buying a lottery ticket, perhaps you should slow yourself down, think through it more carefully. You got to have a better long-term plan than winning the lottery. Why? Because the possibilities, the chances of winning a lottery are so low. You're just going to end up thinking this big thing's going to come through for me, and maybe it won't. If you've had drug and alcohol difficulties for a long period of time, perhaps you feel like you're in financial ruins. Digging your way out of this difficulty can be daunting and overwhelming. It's important to determine to start over, knowing that you can actually make progress over time. Perhaps you have some things to catch up on or clean up in terms of your finances. Are you planning to apply for Social Security disability or general assistance, or to find employment? Do you need a loan or other financial help? Do you need to call creditors to determine what needs to be done first in your life?
Yeah, there certainly are people and resources available who can help you make sound financial decisions.
So determine a financial goal, maybe a 1 year out, then see what you can do to diligently work on that. Plan ahead for it and systematically go through that and work towards it.
Another area where it's good to spend some time doing some intentional planning is in developing a sober network, right? So as you are building and developing your recovery, you need to assemble a support team to help you.
Right, and you're going to want to pick peers and people that are going to support you in your recovery, that can help you grow as a person, that believe in you, that are going to support your recovery rather than actually tear you down. Other people in your life that maybe you want to reach out to. Are there some people in your life that you need to limit contact with? So get around people that support your recovery, limit contact with those who are going to drag you down, tempt you to use again.
And as we've kind of talked about, identifying some specific steps is a good thing you can do. So as you work through all of these categories and work toward being more intentional, think about 2 or 3 specific steps you can take to strengthen your sober network in this case.
Right, and the whole point is to be diligent in your planning, be intentional how you live life. Don't be haphazard or random. Let's think it through and then work the plan.
Let me interrupt here for a moment, guys, and direct our listeners to some of the resources that are available on our website. We're always adding new materials such as podcasts, blog articles, lessons you can use in your treatment center. Also, check out Dr. Hal's Journeys, Co-Occurring Disorder Lifestyle Resource Manual. This manual is packed with clinical wisdom gathered over 30 years. It's a full-color and easy-to-read resource containing hundreds of treatment ideas and strategies that work. You'll find this resource thought-provoking, hopeful, and positive. Here's Tim to tell you how you can get your copy.
Thanks, Galen. So in addition to those other resources that Galen mentioned, if you're interested in getting a copy of Dr. Hal's Journeys Manual, just visit journeytorecovery.com and click on the co-occurring workbook link that you'll find in the top menu.
Tim, we have some free resources for people too, so you can download lessons, use them in your treatment program, use them with a client, or give them to your mom. That's probably what some of us would do.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
So another area that we want to talk about in being intentional is focusing on your mental health treatment. So in treating co-occurring disorders, we're looking at both substance abuse issues and mental health issues that must be addressed.
So we want to put some time and attention into looking at what are you doing with your sobriety and your treatment for substance abuse, but also what are you doing in treatment of your mental health problems. Psychiatric medications and counseling often work in conjunction better than either one alone. In thinking about your ongoing mental health needs, how can you best maintain mental health stability and long-term recovery? So again, before the break, Tim, you were asking about, or just saying, hey, think through a couple, 2-3 things that you could do that are going to make a difference. Here too, think through a couple, 2-3 things that you could do to maintain better mental health.
Another area that's important is transportation. So if you're in recovery, you may have lost your license, for example. So having a car or another way to get around can really do wonders for your sense of independence and your self-esteem.
Right. When I look through this list, and I wrote the list, but when I look through the list and I see transportation, is that really very important? But I think it is so important because it factors into that independence and raises your self-esteem. If you're always begging somebody for a ride, or you can't go to a meeting, you can't get to treatment or something, it's a terrible inconvenience, and it can really damage your recovery. Being stuck at home can feel isolating and reduce your autonomy. Waiting until you need a ride can be aggravating for everyone involved. Becoming more intentional means thinking through it in advance.
Right, so getting or restoring a driver's license or having or using a car may be an important goal for you. And if you won't have a car in the near future, think about what alternative ways you have to feel connected and involved.
Perhaps learning about busing, what's available there, medical rides, or finding transportation companies in your area that would be helpful.
Right.
Rather than just asking the same buddy over and over and over again for another ride, can burn out a friendship that way and cause some conflict.
Right.
Being intentional is a good and important part of your recovery, what we're talking through today. And we're talking about setting goals in key areas of life and then sticking to it. Too often, we find ourselves pushed off track by distractions and numerous interruptions. Some people live in crisis mode, moving from one urgent matter to the next, and never reap the benefit of being planned and deliberate, and therefore they're unable to attain their goals. Now, next time, we'll look at 5 more key areas where you can be intentional with your time, your life, your effort, and by so doing, gain the long-term recovery that you've always wanted. Hey, over to you, Galen.
Thank you. And thanks everyone for listening to today's podcast. Today we are talking about becoming intentional. We certainly hope you enjoyed it. Also, we invite you to check out resources on the web at journeytorecovery.com, where you can download other materials that help you develop skills to identify emotional problems, reduce symptoms, and prevent relapse at journeytorecovery.com. We've been visiting with author, speaker, and clinical psychologist, Dr. Hal Baumschen. I'm Galen Morse. Thanks for listening to today's program. See you next time on Journey to Recovery. Remember, recovery is a journey. Enjoy the ride.